Hi everyone and welcome to the new video. Today I want to show a holiday that you probably never heard of, a King's Day in the Netherlands, which is a national holiday here, and it is the birthday of the king. And it will be interesting for us for two reasons. First, it is a public holiday and there are lots of festivities in the cities. And the second, it is a day of the so-called free market, where people and businesses are allowed to sell goods on the streets. So practically half of the city is turned into the giant flea market. And because my channel is partially focused on vintage tech, radiation and science, I will show if we can find some interesting radioactive antiques. And in this video I will show several interesting artifacts I was able to find and also one dangerous artifact. Last but not least, I will also give some advices if you want to visit King's Day next year. Without further ado, let's get started. Before we begin, a bit of history. King's or Queen's Day originally started in the Netherlands in the 19th century. It was the time of the Queen Wilhelmina, and her birthday was 21st of August, and it was declared as a holiday, and also it was loved by the kids because it was end of the summer. This tradition was remembered. The next queen of the Netherlands was Juliana. It was in 1949. The next queen was Beatrix. She started ruling Netherlands in the 1980s. And since 2014, the king of the Netherlands is Willem Alexander. And his birthday is 27th of April, and this day is also a public holiday in the Netherlands. And this is celebrated as a King's Day, which all tourists are welcome to visit. However, it can be a bit noisy in the city, as you will see. And generally, if you want to visit King's Day, there are two major activities. Or you can go to the city center and there are lots of street concerts and bars are opened and it's usually really crowded. Or you can walk around the city and visit the flea markets, which can be fun if you are more interested in the local culture and you want to buy some local goods, mostly antique or vintage goods, as you will see. In my opinion, the center is too crowded, however it is still nice to see, and in this video I will show you both. So what should you visit in Amsterdam? If you want to see activities in the city center, you can get a train to the Amsterdam Central and you will land directly in the city center. So you can walk around and see channels, boats and concerts. And if you want to see city flea markets, in my opinion it is good to take a train to Amsterdam Zuid. It's a big station that has connection to the center or to the airport. And from this station you can just take a walk to the city center. And while you are doing this, you can visit all things around. If you don't want to walk too much, you can take a tram 5 from the station Zuid to the direction of the city center. It will bring you a bit closer. Also keep in mind that you should start early, about 10 or 11. I started filming this video at 11 and as you will see it is already a lot of people. This was a short introduction and now let's get started. The first thing you will definitely see at King's Day is a lot of orange clothes, and the idea here is interesting. Officially the King's dynasty belongs to Oranje-Nassau, so the orange is kind of a national color in the Netherlands. And as we can see on this King's Day, lots of people wear orange clothes or some orange accessories and so on. Lots of these accessories are sold for the tourists as well, so you can easily pick up one. Locals usually don't buy a new one, they have one from the previous celebration. But if you are a tourist, you can easily buy something orange. And here we can see lots of things for sale. Obviously not all of them are good, but this is the beauty of the flea market, right? Here we can see a vacuum tube Philips radio, probably from the 60s. Philips was a big electronics producer in the Netherlands, but I think they don't do consumer electronics anymore. It's about 11 o'clock in the morning, and as we can see the number of people is already big. Funny enough, we can see a lot of old lamps, and this E27 lamp socket stands for Edison, so technically it was invented 100 years ago and it's still in use today. There is also a lot of glass and crystal, as we can see, though I'm not an expert in that. Still it looks nice if you like it. There is also a lot of vintage clothes. Maybe it's more interesting for women who are doing some DIY stuff or who just want to find something interesting. This thing can be potentially radioactive. the orange uranium glaze was used about 100 years ago in the 1930s. However, in the Netherlands, lots of orange items are not made with uraniums, so the orange color is not a guarantee. This electric fan is interesting. It's probably more than 100 years old, something like 1910. It looks cool to test and restore, but I don't have enough space for it. The remaining kids' books, but they're not so interesting for tourists because they are highly likely in Dutch. But as mentioned in the video title, I am more focused on the radioactive antiques, so I have a radio code with me. Let's see if we can find something. This watch looks like a first candidate. This dial looks like a radium paint. However, as we can see, it is not radioactive. Radium paint was used in the clocks and watches, and also naval and aviation instruments since about 1910 to up to 1960s. And the idea was that the mix of radium and the lume glows in the dark, which was cool at the time. Nowadays the lume is depleted and these watches are not glowing anymore, but they are still slightly radioactive. According to the official point of view, these watches are not dangerous if they are in the good condition, and I will show you later a watch in the bad condition as well. I'm also going to create a separate video about how to spot a radioactive watch. Stay tuned and subscribe, and now let's go forward. This old telephone is definitely not radioactive. This jar is not radioactive as well. Kinsley is a German company that is also known for their radioactive watches. This clock has no radium painted dial, so it is definitely not radioactive. This is an interesting old rotary phone, probably made from the bakelite. This looks a bit like the uranium glaze, but apparently it is not. Uranium glaze was produced in Gouda in the Netherlands, but apparently it was not really popular, so there are not so many of them. And as I mentioned before, there is a lot of orange ceramics in the Netherlands, which doesn't contain uranium. It's not like the Fiesta ware in the US, where if the plate is orange, it's highly likely radioactive. Also, we can see another Philips device. This is another interesting example of the orange ceramics, and as we can see, radio code shows nothing. However, uranium glaze mostly emits beta, and the radio code is not particularly sensitive to beta. But here I see no increase at all, so likely it's not uranium. This jar is another good example. And also we can see nothing. Clock of this era can be radioactive, but here there is no radium dial, so it is not. A radium dial has usually a yellowish color, so it is easy to spot. And this is the first radioactive object I see. It is uranium glass. The woman who is selling this glass sits nearby, so I don't want to confuse her with the meter. But even without emitter, it's very easy to spot uranium glass on the street market, because uranium glass glows in the UV light. There is a certain amount of the UV in the sunlight, so you can literally see that this glass is glowing. It's usually brighter than other objects, and probably that's why it was actually popular. It looks bright. It is the Netherlands, so we can also see a lot of bicycles here. And a lot of clothes. I will skip this. As we can see, the street is long, so this market is actually large. This looks like a radium dial, and the manufacturing time is correct, but interestingly it is not radioactive. Sometimes I have a feeling that the radium paint was expensive, and some manufacturers used a similar looking paint, but without radium. Some vintage watches also used promethium, which had a half-life only about 3 years, so it is not radioactive anymore. Some old compasses also used radium dials as well. This clock is particularly interesting. It looks 100% like a radium dial, but it's not radioactive. Here we can see some parts from satellite dishes. This technology is not popular anymore. Funny enough, someone is selling the car. And this is another orange ceramics, but it is a bit far to measure. I don't want to confuse the sellers. Another interesting example of the Philips radio. This clock can also be radioactive, but apparently it is not. The new radio code 110 is pretty sensitive, so for the radium paint it usually picks the radiation almost immediately. This old clock is also not radioactive, as we can see. This is an interesting fan that can be 100 years old. And here is another clock that can be radioactive, but apparently it is also not. And finally we get a real one. As we can see, the radiation level about 5 times more than the background. And this is the another clock on the same desk. And as we can see, the radiation level is more than 100 times than the background. Still the radiation is only on the surface, so this clock is safe to keep in the cabinet. And this is, as I promised, a really dangerous one. It is just clock made in France, and as we can see, it has no protection glass. If this particle can be digested, it can cause cancer in the future, especially if someone will decide to clean or wipe this dial. These particles can fall down, and the half-life of radium is more than 1,000 years, and you don't want to have radioactive dust in your house, so don't buy a clock in the condition like this. And this is another clock. Its condition looks okay, and interestingly it is an electric one. It was probably made in the 50s. As we can see, there is a lot of people walking around, and the weather is good. And here I can see a next table, and there are definitely a lot of vintage clocks here. Let's have a look. This clock is interesting. Some clocks made by West Clocks used radium dials and they are radioactive, but this one is not. And apparently some clocks of the West Clocks series were made in the US and some were made in Scotland, so maybe it's a different factory. And I'm in Amsterdam, so here we have an European version. But this second clock made by West Clocks is radioactive, so it is kind of interesting. And now let's go forward. As we can see, some people are selling art objects. Here we can see an interesting choice of light bulbs, and this big one has probably the E40 socket, maybe it is a street lamp. This is an interesting Casio watch, and it has an infrared port to connect to the PC. I'm not sure if it still works, and if it's still possible to connect the infrared port to the computer. I can imagine that somewhere in the 90s it was looking like a very cool high-tech. And here is also a big choice of the photo cameras. Some old lenses were made from the thorium glass, and they can be also slightly radioactive. Usually this glass has a yellow tint, but on the compact camera it is harder to see. This is probably a street lamp. And here we can see a fun choice of the typewriters. Also we can see again a lot of clothes here. Here we can see some glass, but surprisingly I practically did not see any uranium glass at all, which was weird because usually in Amsterdam in every vintage store you can easily find 2-3 items. This orange ceramics looks interesting, but apparently it is not radioactive. This looks promising as well. This looks like an old iMac. It can be fun to restore it, but I don't have a space at home anymore. This clock is interesting. A German company, Junghans, also made watches with radium dials, but this one is not radioactive, and according to this design maybe it's older, maybe it's even more than 100 years old. Here we can see an interesting choice of minerals. Some minerals like thorite can be radioactive, but I don't think they are available for sale here. Still, you can usually find it in a special mineral fair if you want. This is an interesting device, probably an electronic typewriter. Another interesting clock from Junghans. Visually it looks like a radium dial, but apparently it is not radioactive. And now I'm leaving the market and going to the city center. This tram you can use if you want to reach the city center faster. And now I'm going to the city center, and we can see a lot of souvenirs for tourists. Also a lot of orange ones that I mentioned at the beginning. The Kingdom of the Netherlands officially have a dynasty named Oranje, so there is a lot of things in orange. This is the city center and probably the most touristic area of Amsterdam. In my opinion, it's barely suitable for living, but it is good for the tourists. And by the way, there are several nice antique stores nearby, but today they are closed. All the sale is on the streets, and the closer to the center, the more people are around. It became even hard to walk. There are also lots of boats in the channels. At this day they are probably fully booked, but it may be possible to find a place in advance. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new about Amsterdam and also about radioactive antiques made in Europe. There are many videos like this from the US, but rarely from Europe. This video is kind of experimental. If you want to see more like this, write in the comments below. Press like and subscribe if you want to see more videos. Thanks for watching and see you next time.